Hey guys, we are back again. I wanted to teach you a little bit about baffle step compensation circuits, or BSCs. Some people call them baffle step correctors. All basically the same thing. It just really depends on the word choice you want to use. But typically it's shortened to BSC. And a BSC circuit is a very basic crossover circuit for a full range speaker. Now what it basically does is it picks a frequency, and we're going to explain why it picks that frequency. It picks a frequency at which it attenuates volume down by X amount of decibels, typically 6 decibels. And that is determined by a couple factors. One, the width of your baffle, and two, the DC resistance of your speaker. And the DC resistance of your speaker is basically whether you know if it's a 4 ohm or 6 ohm or 8 ohm speaker. So if you know the basics that your speaker is a 4 ohm, 6 ohm, or 8 ohm, you're good to go. If you don't, you go to the web page at which you purchase the speaker from. You can also do it with a multimeter, but for simplicity's sake, you can go to the place where you got it, and we're going to show you how to create a baffle step corrector for the Dayton Audio ND65-4. Now, if you guys have been following my videos, you'll know that I just built a speaker out of this for the Amazon Dot so that it would sound really good. And I know you guys were very pleased with the sound quality, so I want to show you how I created that BSC for this. So here's everything you need. First, you need the impedance, which is 4 ohms, or the DC resistance at 3.5. You can use either one of these numbers, okay? The difference is going to be minimal, and we'll show you the difference here in a second. What you're going to do is you're going to go to this page, which is DIYaudioprojects.com. I'll go ahead and put a link down in the description below so you can click on it if you'd like to. And you're going to start putting in information that you have. One is that DC resistance we just looked up at 3.5 or 4 ohms, whichever one you want to use. And the other thing you're going to need to know is the width of the baffle. And the width of the baffle would be determined by the volume of the box that you're building. And so if you use something like WinISD or something to create a box, you're going to know that the size of box and volume, hopefully you'll have those dimensions already figured out, and you're going to know what the width of your baffle is going to be. So we're going to clear this real quick, and we're going to do 4 ohms with the width of the baffle at 4 inches, and we're going to do 6 decibel decrease. Now there's a reason why we do 6 decibel decrease, and let's explain it after we calculate it. So if you see there, they show you an F3, which is 1,140 hertz. That F3 is the point at which we are crossing over the speaker. And in this particular case, what we are actually doing is attenuating the volume down from that range. So at 1,140 hertz, all the way up to 20,000 hertz, we are decreasing that by 6 decibels. Now there's a reason why. Because of a full range speaker, we're not going to get into the crazy details of this, but because it's a full range speaker, it does both the bass and the treble region. And because it does the treble region along with the bass, the treble region will typically, because of physics that we're not going to get into today, will typically have about a 6 decibel increase once you put it in a box. Okay. Now there's a reason why speaker manufacturers don't account for this, and that's because they don't know what your baffle size is going to be. Like if we change this to 10 inches and 6 decibels, look, now the place at which it crosses over is a huge difference, right? We're now at 456 hertz compared to 1140. So speaker manufacturers cannot calculate this into it. That's why we have to calculate it. So based off these calculations of a 4 ohm speaker and a width of the baffle of 4 inches and the attenuation of 6 decibels at 1140 hertz, it's going to, and to 20,000 hertz, it's going to be 6 decibels less, which basically, in effect, we're increasing the bass region. Now, we're actually decreasing the treble region, but what we're trying to do is get more bass out of it. Now, if we built this speaker and we didn't put this baffle step corrector in, from 1140 hertz all the way down to wherever your speaker can play to, we'll just say 50 hertz. So from 50 hertz all the way up to 1140 hertz, you're going to have about a 6 decibel loss. So your speakers are going to be very bright, very loud on the high end, but you're going to be lacking a lot of that bass that you are striving to get out of a speaker. So let's explain what these actually mean. This means that you need an inductor of 0.6 and a resistor of 4 ohms. And that's it. So let's we'll also show you that if you wanted to change that RA to 3.5, we'll show you the basic difference. It's a 0.5 millihertz and a 3.5 ohm. So the difference is negligible, and we'll talk about why that's negligible later. But you're crossing over at 1140 hertz, so you're going to want to find an inductor that's close to 0.6 megahertz. However, with this particular project, I'm going to let you know that 0.6 megahertz is hard to find at a reasonable price. And so what we chose instead was a 0.52 megahertz. As long as you're close to the resistor or the inductor, if you can't find the exact resistor and exact inductor, it's okay. Okay? And let me explain why that's okay. This inductor is basically the crossover point, which is this F3. Okay? The resistor resists everything down after that, or 6 decibels down from this point. So if we were to go to this carstereo.com website, we're going to show you a basic low-pass filter, which is really, honestly, all that inductor is. It's a low-pass filter. Now, a typical low-pass filter does 3 decibels. That's why we had the resistor on. After that, it increases another 3 decibels. Let's reset this inductor, and we'll go 0.52 inductor in a 4 ohm speaker. We calculate it. It says that the hertz is going to be, it's going to cross over the speaker at 1224 hertz. Now, we already know that the 0.6 is 1140, around there. And so basically the difference is about 80 to 100 hertz. And in all reality, that's nothing, okay? So the basic part of where this is crossing over, if you can't find the exact 0.6 inductor, don't worry about it. Get the one that's closest to it, and you'll be fine. So let's show you kind of on Parts Express website like what the crossover components that you might be looking at. You're going to need a resistor, and you're going to need an inductor. Now there's a couple different types of inductors. So let me show you. There's a solid core inductor and there's an air core inductor. Air core inductors are typically bigger as far as actual physical size, and they can get very expensive if you want to start getting into bigger sizes. Typically, a lot of people like the sound of these better. On a small project like the one we're doing with the ND65, I doubt that you'll ever be able to tell a difference in the different inductors. So I always say if it's a cost thing, go with the cheaper one. Now, if you take a look at the solid core, which are the cheaper ones, if you look at the 0.52 and see they have a 0.68, but they don't have a 0.6. So since 0.52 is the closest, that's the one we'll get. And see, it's $1.50. If you take a look at those air core inductors at a 0.5, you're looking at $6.40. And so it can get a little bit more expensive. Now on the other end, you can get an exact 0.6 megahertz if you really want to. But since we know it's not going to make a big difference, we're going to save ourselves some money and get the $1.50 one. Plus, it takes up less room in the box, so we can keep our box smaller. Now, for the resistor, you're just going to buy an audio-grade, non-inductive resistor. And you'll buy the 4 ohm, which, if you take a look at it, you can get it for $1.38 Or once again, if you want to save a little bit more space, then you're going to get the mils, and that one's going to be more expensive. I used the mils in mine because I wanted to save a little more space, but the Dayton Audio would work just fine. Now, that's the basic understanding of what a baffle step circuit does. I'm sorry, a baffle step correction circuit does. It reduces the volume from whatever frequency it's at down. Now once again, if we change the width of the baffle, so if the baffle was 10 inches, that does change the F3 at which we're doing, and it changes the inductor. It does not change the resistor. It's important to know. So if you're working with a lot of 4 ohm speakers and 8 ohm speakers, you might want to buy a bunch of 4 ohm resistors and 8 ohm resistors because it's not going to change, assuming you're going to do a 6 decibel decrease. However, maybe you want to do a boombox style, like a super boombox, and have an exaggerated bass section. So you want to increase this to 8 decibels. Let's explain what that does. If we do an 8 decibel, remember, it's actually decreasing everything from 1140 hertz of this particular speaker on down. So it's decreasing at 8 decibels. Now we said in order to get it back to even, we would want a 6 decibel. 6 decibels makes it a fairly flat response. So if we do an 8 decibel increase, that means from our bass region from 1140 down to wherever our bass region ends, which will once again just say 50 hertz for sake of argument, it's actually going to increase that bass region by 2 decibels. Easiest thing to remember is just 6 minus 8, or 8 minus 6. That's going to be the increase in the bass region. So if we did 12 decibels, that bass region from 1140 hertz on down is going to be increased by an additional 6 decibels. So it'll be 6 decibels louder than the rest of the speaker, than the tweeter end of the speaker. Now that I've said that, that is awesome. So if you want to create a super bass heavy speaker, you can do that with the baffle step compensation. However, remember what you're doing. You're not increasing the bass, right? What we're really actually doing is decreasing the treble end of it, or 1140 hertz down to 20,000 hertz. So if that is the case, remember that you may not have as detailed high end. So some of this comes down to trial and error. You know, test it out with the 4 ohm and see if you like it at the 6 decibel range. If you like the 6 decibel range, keep it. If you're not happy with it, hey, try an 8, 10, 12. Eventually, you're going to get to a point, though, in which the treble end of the speaker has been attenuated so much so that you're not going to be happy with the sound anymore. Where that is, that depends on the speaker. So I can't tell you exactly on each speaker. That's going to be trial and error on your end. Now there is one other way to create this baffle step correction circuit, and that's if you have audio equipment. So if you have some audio equipment like a microphone, like a UMIC 1, and you're using something like RU to measure your speakers, you can build this together without any baffle step correction circuit at all, and take a measurement. And you can visually look at your graph and see where you're starting to see the increase or the volume starting to increase from. At that point, you would then go to this car audio website that we talked about and figure out what size inductor it is. So, for example, I'm going to use 0.9 and 8 ohm speaker because this is, if you take a look at Paul Carmody's Sprite build, he uses a 0.9 inductor at an 8 ohm. And we can see that that's about 1400 hertz, so 1400 hertz at which the dip would start to occur. And then you're going to have to figure out what resistor, and that's going to be the fun part because you don't have a ton to go on. Now I know Paul Carmody's Sprite build, he ended up using a 20 ohm resistor. you would then do trial and error with different resistors to get the attenuation that you want so that you can get the bass and the sound that you want. A lot harder to do that way, but you can come up with some better results. Well, you may be able to come up with some better results if you do it that way. All right, guys, that's the end of the BSC demonstration. Once again, these links will be down below in the description if you want to use them. If you have any questions, please don't be afraid to ask. I'm always here to answer questions if I can. And as always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.